Hey everyone, welcome to the Talking Leadership podcast. Thank you for joining me. And today's guest is Dre McLaughlin. Dre, how are you going?
I am amazing, absolutely tremendous. How are you?
Mate, it's amazing to have you back. Now, you were one of my initial podcast guests, and you did a lot out of session to give me some confidence to do this and to keep pursuing what I'm doing. So I'm eminently grateful for that. And so, if I can return the favor, I'm now doing some video podcasts again. This is a way for me to reach out and say thank you and pick your brain a little bit on some things to do with leadership. Hence the title of the podcast for those that are watching. So before we get into it, and as a way to just get people oriented as who you are, Dre, if they didn't listen to that first podcast or they're not following the Hot Hire podcast with almost or over 150 podcast episodes. So if you're not listening to me, you need to be listening to Dre on that podcast. Always, yes. So let's go. So Dre is the founder of Job Search Queensland, and he's also an author. He currently has a book that you can get as a PDF for free called The Number One Interview Playbook. And you're also writing a second book. So can you give us a bit of an outline of what that second book is, mate?
Yeah, so the second book is called, so the title's not official yet, but it's the Number One Job Hunt Playbook for Sales Professionals. So
way too long, mate. Way too...
I don't want to get it wrong.
Sure.
So yeah, my plan is to write one book every year. So the book that I'm going to write next year is going to be about branding. But this book about sales professionals, that's my background. So I know I probably don't look it, but about 20 years in like sales and recruitment. And this book is all about finding those opportunities and how to navigate those and close them.
No worries. So what I'll do in the podcast description is I'll make sure that I put a link in to the Hot Hire podcast as well as the current book that you've got out. So for those watching, listening, please get in and have a look and give Dre some feedback. Now, we discussed your views of leadership in the first podcast we did, the audio podcast. So now I want to take things a little further, if we could, again, with the theme of leadership in addressing poor leadership. So I know that you deal with corporates, you deal with leaders on a regular basis. And so you, like all of my guests, bring their own unique perspectives to this. But you in particular, given that you deal with a lot of people that are in and out of the space of work in sales, are still in leadership roles, whether they're in sales or in other sectors. So you've seen good and bad. How do you address poor leadership from what you've seen of others, or how have you addressed it, mate?
Yeah, so I'd say like the poor leadership that I've seen, or I guess like the common patterns, is like number one, like communication. So there's been like a lack of communication or clear instructions. Two is towards the middle of the year, there was actually had a friend which is a coach, and we were using the same virtual assistant, and the way that I managed the assistant and the way that she managed the assistant was completely different. So I am someone I'm very sort of big vision. So this is a vision. I'm not so good on the detail. Whereas she was someone that I guess probably a perfectionist. So a perfect perfectionist. So every single detail has to be right, has to follow the steps. Like with myself, it was more a case of, just get it done, do the job, however you need to do it. I'll be there to support you, and you just go off, use your initiative. And if you got any questions, let me know. So we had a very different approach. And the way that I viewed the virtual assistant was we were working as a partnership, whereas in the other coach, it was more as, you work for me, you do as I say as well. So I've seen that's been, very common. Other things that I've seen is training as well. So a lack of like training. And
you mean in the context of the leader, that they're not have the right tools or training to
Oh, sorry.
take on those
Great.
roles?
Yeah. Sorry. Great question. As in, like the person that they've taken on, that person hasn't been giving enough training to be able to do their job effectively.
Yeah, that's come up a lot in the discussions that I've had, and I think it's more pervasive than people will talk about publicly. Is that, and I think rightly that we're time poor, we might be resource poor. So if you've got people and human resource assets in your business, you're going to want to promote them when the time is right, and not necessarily with a plan for how to train them in that space of leadership if it was required, because again, you may not have the time and in some cases the inclination to do it. So you're seeing that a fair bit in your travels, Dre?
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you. Sorry
Sure.
to interrupt. So what have, because you've done so many shows, is it 150?
150, 150. Yeah.
150. What
Thank
have been
you.
what? So yeah, congratulations on that.
Cheers.
What have been the common trends that you've seen? So have you seen the communication, the respect, the training, or have there been?
I get the sense pretty strongly that it's an area that needs to be addressed better. But in saying that, and it's easy for me who's talking to people to say that without having the dollars to invest behind it and to actually make it happen. So is there a better methodology for helping people come up? I'm sure that there is. But one okay. So to answer your question as honestly as I can, I think people don't know what they don't know. And so if you don't have the systems to find out whether or not, if you don't have the inclination to implement the systems to address whether or not the people you've got are skilled up enough to be bumped up to the next level or the next level above that, or to senior management teams, then potentially that's either an oversight on the senior leadership team, or there are other mitigating factors like we just don't have the funds to do it or the capability. And so I think now, given what we've seen with the explosion of things like LinkedIn and other platforms, that there's really little excuse now not to be able to find someone or find some network of people that would give you 10 minutes of their time to help you better understand what your leadership pipeline looks like. Now, I'm talking medium, big organization scenarios. In smaller organizations, it might be different, but I think the theme is still there, that if you assume the people you've got can step up without training, without transitional help, I think it's a big assumption to make. But again, I'm not in the space where that is staring me in the face. And so, but I do get the sense that it's something that we need to be talking more about. And it may almost permeate to how people recruit, because when you're looking to recruit, do you really know what the position is you're recruiting the person to go into? Have you scoped it out enough so that you get the right fit for the person coming in? Because anecdotally, I hear that sometimes recruiters will get the irrits because they get a spec for a position, and once once the person who's going for the job gets the role, they get into a role that's not quite how it was sold at interview. And I think that happens, I wouldn't say all the time, but I think it's a common occurrence. And again, there's ways to deal with that, but not being on the front line of that, I'm not sure what they are. So what, have you seen a lot of that?
Yes, I was going to say a lot of those job descriptions that the companies use are quite outdated as well.
Yep.
So they're not updating them like which they should, because it's I see it a lot. So someone gets into a job, they're so happy, this is the best thing since like sliced bread. How was your first day? It was amazing. How was your first week? It was brilliant. How was your first month? Yeah, it's good. It's good. All right. How about the second month? Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. The third month, oh, yeah, I'm not sure if this is for me. I've been, it's because it's not. It's so difficult because because you don't actually know until you get into the position, like what the culture is going to be like, what the actual the role and responsibilities, and until you're actually in the trenches as well. And it happens, yeah, all the time.
So when you do get people that are in that, at the cusp of moving out of a role, do you encourage them to talk internally with their bosses, or do you find a way to help them exit, as dignified a way as you possibly can? Like, I've never been in that position, because in my younger days I would just quit or look for something different, and I didn't give it a lot of thought. So I'm not coming from a space of understanding how that works. But do you find that there's a counselling role there from your experience, or people just quit and try and find
Yeah.
something else?
So yes, if there's someone that's in a position and they're looking for their next role, then it's, why do you want to leave? You've got like the surface level reason, but then there's all, if you go like a few levels down, there's always, like a deeper reason to why they want to leave. Like maybe they're not being like valued enough. Maybe they just don't have the confidence to do the job, or they're going to get beaten by somebody else to that next promotion that comes up. And is it a case of, okay, they should stay and fight, or should they go somewhere else where they might be like more valued and appreciated? So many different reasons. So I always leave it up to the person. So I'll ask them a few questions, like what's the reason that you want to leave? And if you leave, what will that look like? And what are your internal drivers? What are you motivated by? And if you were to say, fast forward maybe about 12, 15 months time, what does that ideal role look like? How does it look? How does it feel? Would you be happy waking up like every day, or is it
Shit, I'd hope so. I'd hope so. I'd like to wake up every day, sure. Mate, before I forget, the feedback loop there. Now, I've done one exit interview in my whole career, and it was the most excruciating half hour of my life, because I'll be honest here. I didn't probably give a truthful accounting as to why I wanted to go. I wanted the pain of being there to be done. And so, is there value in exit interviews? And do you believe employees, so don't use me as an example, because I stuffed it up royally, because I don't think I was being as truthful as I could be. Is there value in getting that exit interview data back to the people that recruited for that role initially? Because I don't know how much education goes back to the senior management that are recruiting people, and whether or not there's any degree of introspection from the people going, oh shit, we try and hire that Dre bloke, but he didn't like it after 3 months. He's obviously happy to wake up every day, but not to come into work. Like, how do you get to a point where that process is better, because you don't want to keep hiring and having people leave on you, because there is an economic cost to the business, let alone to continuity of what you're doing, whether that's service provision or the provision of goods. So there's a question here somewhere. So what I'm asking is, are those exit interview processes of use, and do you think senior leaders are actually using that information to be better at that hiring function?
Yeah, so they are very useful as long as if there's like a high turnover, then that information is gold. However, it all depends on the person that sat in that chair and how truthful that they're going to be. If there's someone that is, I guess, probably a bit of an introvert, they're not going to be able to, or it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to speak to someone about, maybe the challenges and the problems that they've had. More of an extroverted person will be like, okay, this is what's happened. This was wrong. Maybe you should try this for your next hire. But I'd always say, don't burn any bridges. And it's all about the way that you articulate your experience, like while you were there, because you don't want to, I guess, rub anyone up like the wrong way, because they might still have to give you like a reference if you don't have a position to.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've burned a few bridges, sort of flame on, like, yeah. And that, I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's quite a stupid thing to do, but that is what it is, at least in my case. All right, Dre. So moving on to, and I think it's linked to this in some ways, maybe a lot of ways. How do you manage the expectation of a leader? So we'll use the example of poor recruitment processes, poor recruitment technique, or just not admitting that you may not know how to run a proper recruitment process. Um, in that context, um, how do you manage the expectations of the leadership in that context so that that they they're fully across what they need to do and that they link their role in that recruitment process to good outcomes for the business?
Okay, I'm trying to understand
Yeah,
like
okay. Let me
uh,
unpack it a bit more. So,
yeah,
why I went there with this is just using the recruitment example because it's one I know you're very familiar with. Is that
yeah,
typically recruiting people is very important, and particularly if you're recruiting people to leadership roles, it's
yeah.
critically important to get a good match. To what extent um, is managing that process up to the leader or up to those that they delegate to do that? Because where I think I'm going with this, and these are new questions, so you're helping me do some thinking
Yeah,
here. So
I'm
if it's a
understanding.
shitty question, I'll get rid of
No,
it.
no,
I'm just
yeah, I'm understanding now. So it's
yeah.
great. Yeah,
So I think at times because some people in organizations are so many layers removed from the recruitment side, do you think something gets lost in that process to where the person that's doing the recruiting may not fully understand or be aware of what is needed for that person that they're trying to recruit? Because you could be recruiting for someone very much more senior than you, and that would be difficult. Like if you've never been a CEO or an executive director or a chair, what innate things would you be looking for if you've never had that experience versus someone who has had that experience? And if someone's sitting in front of them going, yeah, this person's the shit, they know what they're doing, they're saying the right things, I know instinctively where they're coming from and they've got a CV to match, versus someone who is assigned to do the recruitment and it's just another thing that they've got to do.
yeah,
Is that often a
yeah.
tension?
That makes total sense. So the way that I'm looking at it is that you've got, say, like a HR manager that is recruiting for a particular position. So let's say he or she is recruiting for a sales role, and then you've got like maybe a sales director that's recruiting for the same role. So the sales director, they would have, I'm assuming, would have been through that like position, so they would have done the role. So they know the ins and outs, the features, the benefits, the challenges, the obstacles, the targets, the clients. So they know the role really well. The HR manager, they'll have a job description, and maybe all they're really looking for is maybe like 3 to 5 candidates, and they're just looking to, like tick some boxes. So, oh, does this person have a good attitude? Do they have, like 5 years experience? Tick. Um, do they have, like formal like sales training? Tick. And then, they'll be looking at those particular like candidates. But with sales, it's hard because I feel that salespeople, um, most of them are not able to express, their results, their achievements, their personalities, their skills effectively on, say, like a resume. Um, and I guess that's probably partly why I help them. That's like my job. So, um, and then yeah, the HR manager is just looking on paper, but with sales, it's all about your personality, and everything comes down to, know, like, and trust. Because if people are going to hire you, if people are going to buy from you, they're going to base that decision on emotion, so the way that they feel about you, and then they're going to validate that with logic. So say for instance, I've gone for a job, and like say if it's with a sales director, so the sales director will be like, maybe he's got a list, Andre ticks, or Dre ticks that box. So that's my full name, Andre. That's what I say. Ticks that box, that box, that box. He did say in the interview that he's a quick learner. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a great guy. He's a good guy, and I believe that he can do the job. So does that Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess you made the point quite nicely there about in the HR function, you're possibly looking to a tick and flick exercise to get the right person is, whereas what you just described about the abilities and the skill sets of the salesperson and their interpersonal capabilities is next level up from just ticking the boxes, because in an interview setting, and the next step of that, I guess, is you get your 5 or 10 candidates for that first round of potential interviews. Hopefully it's not 10, but let's say it was. That if that director isn't the person helping to mine that list of applicants, then potentially there's already the problem that you've got well-meaning people in the other part of the organization that are doing this as a task, not really looking for the things that the higher ups might be expecting in that role. And it sounds like it might happen more often than we're prepared to admit. And that has an economic cost, I guess, for the business. But then confidence that your people that are recruiting know their stuff. I've never been on the tail end of a recruitment process that's gone wrong, but I'm guessing it creates all sorts of angst internally for the business, because you would hope that people could recruit, because there are plenty of people that want jobs. It's just finding the person to fit the job, because the one thing you don't want is an employee that is vehemently not suited to the role and or acts out in that role while they're there. So you don't, a poisonous mix of those things is not good for anyone, including the person doing the job.
That's right. And it's so expensive and time consuming to go through that hiring process. And it costs like thousands, especially if you choose the wrong hire for that position. So if you're spending, or if people are spending all of that time training them up, and then, after a week, after a month, after like 6 months, it's, oh, okay, this person's not working out. Then you've got to go through the whole process all again, and everybody that's involved in that process. So whether it's the HR manager, the team leader, like the sales director, even if the director of the company wants to interview them, and the amount of rounds. So all of those hours could be spent on money making or revenue generating activities.
Yeah, and that the need to have people on quickly to help generate revenue is business dependent. And so if you've got a company that cash flow is not an issue, then you can take your time in the recruitment process. I'm typically thinking of government here, because government will do what it needs to do, and it gets the people it needs at the pace that it needs to. But if your business is relying on sales, and sales is a perfect example here, you can't be waiting and hiring people that aren't suited to sales if that's what you're after. So no, I get that. Dre, in terms of leader development now, we could go anywhere with this question, but I think I want to put it in the context of what you know, because one, it'll make for a better discussion, and two, you know your industry better than me. Do you believe leader development in sales is as good as it could be? And that's not to cast any degree of blame on this. I'm just saying leader development is an ongoing thing. Is it a work in progress in the sales space generally? And what is it you should be looking for leaders in a sales context? So sales is one thing, but a leader in that sales thing, is that a different kind of person? Is there different skill sets there? What would you look for?
That is a great question. So
thanks, mate. they take time, but I'll get to one eventually.
Yeah, that was because what's sprung to mind is what you find is that you'll have really successful salespeople will get promoted, and that successful salesperson now has to look after, say, like maybe a team. And normally salespeople, even though they're very good with people, they're normally focused on sales. And I've seen this a lot. And when they have to start to manage other people's emotions, other people's results, probably because they're the top person, they're the top salesperson. And the way that they probably look at they probably look at things slightly different. It's probably a case of, okay, why isn't everybody else like me? And I know that there's lots of successful salespeople, especially that I know, that are not able to manage that. So what I would say in relation or response to your question, what is really important is emotional intelligence, so like EQ. So being able to like have that self-awareness, being able to listen to people, to tune in, to empathize, but also having that ability to motivate and inspire people to take action and to get those desired results. What were we going to say? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just out of curiosity, have you ever come across leaders in that sales space that have gotten there somehow, that they've been mediocre, potentially salespeople, or it's not in their DNA, but they're very good at managing salespeople? Have you ever found that, or salespeople only respond to people that are like them? So almost like, and I won't mention the companies that my partners work for, but
Yeah.
she's very good with sales. And one thing that she said to me in many of her roles is that the people around you, when they know you're good at the sales thing, there's a collegiate attitude amongst those that know their own. So the animal that is the salesperson has a certain way, a certain swagger, a certain way of being.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, can you get someone who's not of the tribe to lead a bunch of them? Have you ever seen that, or is that,
Yeah,
or am I just
that's
talking shit?
no, another great question. So I'm trying to think back to all of my sales positions that I've had, and it is a case of definitely in sales. If the person hasn't walked the walk, then they're not going to get that same respect. So if there's that salesperson, so especially in recruitment, so with recruitment, you have to work your way up. So you'll come in as a consultant, then you'll be, like a team leader, then you'll be, an associate director, then like a sales director, then a director. So to do that, they have lots of different like KPIs. So you have to hit all your sales figures, but then there's also they give you training and KPIs around. Okay, yep, you're now not a consultant, you're managing, you're a team leader. So we want you to manage like these two people, and we want you to get the best out of them. So in recruitment, they have, I know like Michael Page, they've got a very good system of being able to, they've got really good like formal training of being able to bring people up and work on every particular like, area.
Right. So it's unlikely in some industries
Yeah.
where the person, right. Okay. Have you ever found, and this might be the outlier, but it's worth asking the question, entrepreneurs, so people that start up their businesses but don't have sales skills and do recruit really good teams of salespeople, is that walk the walk, go out the door when the person who owns the business says, right, I've got a vision for what sales is, and then people just come on board because that person necessarily has good EQ, is self-aware, is prepared to listen, but is also prepared to challenge their people? I mean, I can think of a few off the top of my head, and I won't mention who they are, but I think those people exist. There's just not that many of them.
Yeah. So my personal opinion is that, so any entrepreneur, they need to go through the process of sales, because that's your lifeblood of your business. And they are, you're dealing with your clients. So you should at least, I know like sales can be, like a pretty hard gig, but they need to have got to a certain point to be able to bring other people in, to be able to train them or teach them sales. But I know that you do have, external companies that will like jump on board and do your sales for you. But I believe that they should give it at least a red hot crack at trying to do their own sales.
Yeah, no worries. Look, this last question, Dre, is very much connected to the previous, and there may be a difference here, but there may not be, but I will ask it anyway. future skill sets. So if I asked you to do a bit of crystal ball gazing into the future, do you believe there are skill sets coming, or that there are skills that we've got now that need to change into the future? And look, I won't hold it against you if we bring COVID up, because that has been an issue, obviously, but sales is going to be sales irrespective of pandemics or wars or anything else. It is what it is. There's a certain skill set there. Are there any that you see coming that are new that may take sales people by surprise? From a leadership point of view, I'm only talking from a leadership point of view.
From a leadership point of view, the only thing that's really coming to the top of my head is just being able to get the best out of your people. So being able to motivate, inspire, and empower people to take action, be consistent with their the behaviors. That's really the only thing that I can think of off the top of my.
That's fine. Look, Dre, this has been great. Thank you for helping me with the next tranche of these questions, and to keep talking about the topic area, because what fascinates me about this is that I've had a gun salesperson in my life for the last 30 years, and she's very good at what she does. And as you're talking, I sort of try and connect the jobs that she's had, the way that she is. And I have to tell you, she's a different human being when she's in the sales thing. I've seen it out in the workplace, out in the retail arena, and she's a different human being. It's I think it's something that can be turned on and off, and she's very good at doing that. And when you're talking about the experiences that you've had, it makes me think, that they know their own. And I think it would be difficult to break in to that world if you don't have a sales orientation, and not a lot of people do. Like, I think anyone can show compassion and get people on board, but sales, I think, is a lot bigger than that. And potentially, in my world, I think the selling the idea of what is your what's the business case that you're trying to sell me? Why do I need something is critically important, because I could take my business anywhere, but if you or whoever I'm talking to is selling me where I need to go, you're actually painting the vista for where you could be. Now, it's not, I don't mean sales on everything, mate, but I think what I'm trying to get to here is that this is an area that's interesting when it comes to leadership, because although what you've said to me seems like there are very set skills, and that you need them to be able to do what you need to do, there's a lot of training involved. I think there's more to the leadership issues there, and I think you've given me an insight into what some of those are. So hopefully, as you grow what you're doing with Job Search Queensland, that you're helping to tease that out a little bit in that space, because if we all did leadership 100% well, we wouldn't have these discussions, nor would you get the grey matter going. So I appreciate your time, mate.
Yeah, thank you for having me on again. So it's been awesome. And do you know what? I believe I'd love to see a basic sales course or program in like every school. So with sales, like the skills that you learn, it's just, they're just priceless. So like understanding like people, like the challenges, the pain points, and how to like negotiate and compromise and influence, just great life skills.
Oh, they're basics in leadership, mate. You need those things to get people to come along. So I think this is we can have more discussions around this if you're prepared to talk to me, mate. So for everyone that's listening, thank you for following me on what is a new video podcast platform for talking leadership. I've been talking to Dre McLaughlin, who is the founder of Job Search Queensland, mate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Really appreciate it.
Okay, so for those listening, this has been and viewing, this has been Talking Leadership. I'll catch everyone on the next video cast. See you guys.